So I joined Google to help democratize Google hiring, I'd say, right? So when I joined Google, less than 10% of hires were generated from online recruiting, right? And so you think of Google, this tech company leading the online revolution, but like only 10% of hires were coming from the recruiting organization. And so and why this is important is so the online channel is like the most accessible, most diverse hiring funnel. It's one of the most efficient, most cost effective, and Google was underutilizing it.
This is OctoTalks, people transforming digital experiences. Nekosi Nelson has an MBA from Yale School of Management, and he is an expert in managing people, bringing the best out of his teams, and leading projects to success. He's done so in organizations like Google, the nonprofit Common Threads, and Washington's Public School District. In today's episode, Nekosi joined us to talk about his experience using technology to lead people towards common goals and make better decisions. He shared stories about his time at Google, where he worked with the goal to democratize the hiring process and give more equal opportunities. They grew the online applications from 10 to 53%. He also discussed with us the importance of putting people first to be a successful leader. Welcome, Nekosi. Good to have you here.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thanks for inviting me to this very important platform, and looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, me too. So let's get started. The first question we always ask here is, who is Nekosi? How do you define yourself?
Yeah, that's the toughest question first.
Yeah.
I would say, and one, thanks for the intro. And so you covered a lot. I would say I'm complex, right? I'm human. I'm a son to Doris and Bruce and Nick.
Nice.
I'm a friend to Minnie, a husband to Helen, and a father to Sydney and Sloan. And so I take those roles pretty seriously. And then professionally, I would describe myself probably as a big thinker who loves to just inspire people, to just maximize the opportunities in front of them, to connect their own why to like organizations why and teams why. I get excited about complex kind of problem solving that require coordinated actions across teams, across functions. I get excited about that. And at the end of the day, and I think you mentioned some of this, like no matter what the business scenario is, I'm always locked in on creating value for people and thinking about people in the system. And so thinking about the users, thinking about the stakeholders, and I put that above everything. And then the last piece, I'm sure many folks that have worked with me would say, I love having fun in the process. I'm going to laugh, I'm going to have fun, and I'm going to tell some jokes. And so that's a little bit about who I am.
Nice. Well, I can say for sure that you have a very nice laugh. So it's great to hear you laugh. It gives us we want to be a part of it. So yeah, thank you, Nikos. It was a great intro. Well, I guess my next question is something that I believe many of the people that are listening to it may have. Because up until recently, you worked in Google, which is like a very famous company. And I guess all over the world, people are always thinking about, wow, working in Google must be like a dream job, right? So I would love to know a little bit more about your experience working there. What was it like?
Absolutely. Google's still a dream job for many. It's still a dream job, right? So Google's an industry leader, billions of users across multiple projects, but really the culture and the benefits and the perks really has catapulted Google into that conversation around like brand employment and best places to work. And so it's a unique place, right? Some of the smartest people in the world are assembled there.
Yeah.
And surprisingly, when you think the smartest people, you would think that it's just homogenous, but there's a great deal of diversity across multiple dimensions, any dimension you can imagine. And so just, it's an environment where iron sharpens iron, right? And so it's a culture that encourages you to put forth your best ideas, and you can expect those ideas to be respectfully challenged and scrutinized. It's a culture that creates space for, innovation and risk taking, but still the same drive towards continuous improvement and excellence. And so you marry all those things together at that scale. It's every day is a different day, and it's fun. The training and the learning systems are just phenomenal. And so Google hires experts from every single area. So even how the office is designed, or like everything is really intentional, really curated. And then oftentimes those individuals are like sharing their expertise and putting on the learning
Yeah.
management system. And so learning is emphasized. And then also, I'm sure everyone's probably saw the movie The Intern, and it's probably one of the most accurate movies in terms of just like, is that real? Like, that is real in terms of the environment, and like how much attention is taken to like just create a fun space, right? And that's
Nice.
just like open and breeds creativity. And so on many aspects, yeah, it's still certainly a dream job.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that everything has a lot of, intent, and people, that all the changes probably have a good reason to happen. I have this feeling that the greatest companies in the world, they put a lot of effort in thinking how to create the best environment for the people, because at the end of the day, people is, the most valuable asset of any
Absolutely.
business. So yeah, sounds super nice. And also, I guess when you reunite so many smart people, conversations must be very rich, right? A lot of
Very
creativity
rich.
going on.
Yeah, but surprisingly, right, you have some of those challenges of like driving decision making. You get a whole bunch of smart people in the room. It's probably not the most efficient decision making process. You could argue that it could be the most effective. And so it's different. It's big. It's at scale. And you just can't be like, there's a margin of error to that when you're creating at that scale. And so it brings forth some challenges, but I mean that's a part of it, right? Like, to really embrace the challenge.
Of course. Tell us a little bit more about your role there, Nekosi. What was your
Yeah.
area? And also, let's jumping into challenges. So maybe you have a few of those to share as well.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. So I joined Google to help democratize Google hiring. I'd say, right. So when I joined Google, less than 10% of hires were generated from online recruiting, right? And so you think of Google, this tech company leading the online revolution, but like only 10% of hires were coming from the recruiting organization. And so and why this is important is, so the online channel is like the most accessible, most diverse hiring funnel. It's one of the most efficient, most cost effective, and Google was underutilizing it. And so it was the opportunity. What brought me to Google is like this opportunity to help people land their dream jobs. And so that was kind of the personal connection. And then the business opportunity to just build program products that, had a scale that was unique to Google. And so essentially what we decided to do was to create a two-sided marketplace for Google careers. And so we essentially were matching the supply and demand of hiring at Google. We were applying some like, innovative and emerging and best practices around product management, product development, service delivery to talent engagement. And so I was a part of a leadership team that consisted of the branding and marketing, operations, delivery, and engineering leads. And
Wow.
I blended program management with project management with service delivery to deliver that operation at scale. And so manage teams ultimately, we again thinking of our users, optimizing that experience, and as you mentioned beforehand, move the needle from contributing to about 9% of Google's hires to, for this particular segment, it's 28%. And then we managed another large segment to where the team was managing 53 or contributing to 53% of Google hires. And so
Wow.
um,
Impressive.
yeah, and so challenge, right? So there's a lot of challenges there, and so let's talk about on the global side. So aside from managing time differences
Mm,
and the impact on just agility to address urgent matters, that's a real thing.
yeah.
There's cultural differences, those, but probably the biggest challenge is, and I'm sure a lot of product managers that may be listening to this, or program managers, may even in a local or domestic context, may relate to this, but it's trying to deliver what I would call like customized, like scaled customization, right? It's trying to
Hmm.
deliver an experience or some outcome that's really relevant to the individual user, but that can be implemented at scale. And so it's finding the right balance of like tailoring content and the features and like the journeys of a group, but really thinking about the individuals, right? And so for us, we had like 7 million people applying. They were kind of users in the marketplace. They expect some level of standardization and consistency, and they expect that once they submit an application, that their application would be reviewed with consistency. And
Oh,
then we had kind of internal product managers that was focused on our internal users, and they had to very tailored and unique workflows that we had to integrate into. And so that certainly produced a challenge. And
yeah,
sure,
I
that's a
imagine.
challenge.
I mean, I suppose that in companies that have such a massive impact, scalability is always an issue, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, you have to think from day one how I'm going to create a process that is able to scale, global level.
Exactly.
So, yeah,
Exactly. And so it made like, okay, this, is this the right pathway? Would it produce the best results? Yes, but is it scalable? Can we do it can we do it at the million user level, right? And for Google products, it's at the billion user level, right? And so that just requires a lot of scale and a lot of trade off, right? And so that takes a special product manager or program manager to come in and kind of know and prioritize users
yeah,
requirements and stakeholders, and to come in and prioritize those, and be straightforward with what the trade-offs are. Here's what we're losing, here's what we're gaining, and kind of negotiate that through the way. So that's a challenge. One thing we were talking about earlier, and this has to do with scale oftentimes as well. And I mentioned, like, I'm a people person. I try to think about the individual. But certainly, as you think about managers and the leaders and managers that are listening to this, probably can relate for sure. Is you're looking at KPIs and you're seeing aggregates. You're seeing hundreds. You're seeing thousands of whatever that is. Right? You're seeing
yeah,
millions, and it's important to think that there's a person, like that represents a person. And
yeah,
certainly in this work we were doing, right? Like these are people's opportunities, they're their lives. And so like being careful with that and just not seeing, okay, like if we move, the system here or there, it impact 10,000 or 12,000 or 100,000, but like, no, that's 100,000 people. That's 12,000 people. And so that's
sure.
that's always a challenge to, as you're leading teams, to drive that home, especially
Yeah,
those teams that have efficiency as like their top priority. Like, what's the
of
people
course.
impact, and really thinking about that.
Yeah, yeah, that's nice that you mentioned this, Nekosi, because as you know, here in Octobot, for us, our mission is to work with people, right, and for people, and deliver the best products that can help and improve their lives. So, something that we also ask everyone that is joining this podcast is, how do you think that your work at Google transformed people's lives, right? I mean, how
Right.
maybe you have a
Right.
few stories, or how can we like share a little bit more of the impact that your work did to others' lives?
No, love it. Yeah. I mean, a big part of it was that accessibility, like making Google accessible beforehand. So what it means to not like to not apply online means you're coming in because you have a relationship with Google, someone at Google, and many people don't, right? Like certainly, folks that are from underrepresented communities, they may not have a network that works at Google, right?
Yeah,
And so to be able to have a platform where they can go on and explore if Google is the right match for them. So, that's kind of like, again, at a very aggregate level, but we really were helping people land dream jobs. And there's also, we would get tons of feedback on LinkedIn, but there were situations where people that didn't have software backgrounds, and they were software development backgrounds, and they were working in a grocery store, but were like working on the side and developing their skills on the side. We gave
yeah,
them an opportunity to come in to do a
nice.
technical interview and prove that, like, yeah, I could code with the best of them, right? And so that's what we were trying to do. That's part of that, democratizing, and even down to the KPIs, right? Like we understood who was applying, what groups they were a part of, and was really intentional of like, how can we encourage everyone to believe and see themselves in a role at Google, right? And so that's a part of it for sure. And so there are all sorts of those stories. I mean, that's what we were doing. And in a lot of ways, Google was changing, will change the trajectory of people's lives and their family, right? Like just,
Yeah.
I mean, like just with some of the, to talk real, right? The money that people are getting in software development and like this can change their lives if they're coming from, from all sorts of backgrounds. And so yeah, we changed lives for sure. And was able to like land people, and put them into their dream positions for sure.
That's so cool. And I love that you have like this diversity approach, right? Like the importance of having people from different backgrounds. You just mentioned several different areas that were part of the discussions and the decisions that you were doing in order to democratize access to Google, which I love the concept, by the way. But I'm curious, Nekosi, how many people did you lead? I mean, I suppose you were like in contact with, I don't know, hundreds of people maybe?
Yeah, no, I should have counted all the people. So my team size, I managed managers. My team size at its largest point when I had a pure team that was about 35
Wow.
downstream, and then as I started to take on more global operations, my direct team was about 20, but I had a workforce of about 450 that were a part of the operations. And so,
Wow.
yeah, and so that added certainly a whole nother complexity to
Yeah, I imagine. Do you have like any tips for, people management? I imagine that, even leading 20 people is a lot. How did you make sure that everything was flowing at the best possible way? How did you make sure that communication was good, that you knew
it.
what was going on?
No, for sure. So one's, lead with data, right? Data's going to tell your story and just provide the context. And so know the data points that you should look at and where you should go if a red flag, pop, you're right. Like if there's a red flag. I would say use frameworks as I learned and as we're thinking, like as I grew in my management style. You use frameworks, but be flexible, right? And
Okay.
frameworks are really important. And certainly if you're coming from like a theoretical background and you're thinking about, situational leadership or, some of the frameworks, but be flexible. Because again, it's about people. You have to personalize a relationship. Take time to understand your team members' why. And that's going to drive everything. Why are they here? How do they connect from a values perspective, from a
Yeah.
professional development perspective? I would say coach more and solve less. And so coaching is helping people coming up with the answers on their own. Really asking the right questions, helping them to navigate the journey to decision making. It's going to potentially take some internal work to like understand that the answer they arrive at may not be your answer, and like there's no right answer.
Yeah.
You mentioned this beforehand, like don't feel the need to know everything. And so as I moved from smaller teams to larger teams, I didn't have a pulse on every single thing and every single interaction. And so what I say is like, don't feel the need to know everything, but be curious about everything. Like,
Okay.
value the perspectives of the front line and like maybe reverse skip levels, form hypotheses and ask questions, but don't assume and don't expect to know. Like, I don't expect to know, and like there's value. And then again, I'm gonna say it again, like that people over everything. Just continuously think about, okay, who are the people in the system? Who do I need to connect in with? Like, what's my role? How can I block and if I'm thinking about team and leadership, how can I
Yeah.
block and tackle for my team? How can I, do the analysis of like what's the interest of this team? What are their goals? Like, what are their KPIs? How can I connect them? And so do that blocking and tackling for your team. And that's your role, right? Like as a manager, think about it at the system level. Here's how our work connects in with other teams.
Yeah.
And here's how I can get on their roadmaps, right? And and make sure my work aligns.
Wow. Yeah, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like one of the biggest struggle when you are leading a project or a team is that it's so easy to fall on that trap of I'm going to back to back meetings and I'm like having all those conversations, but when do I have time to be with my team and listen to them and understand what's going on? So yeah, I feel like it's very important yeah, to have like this focus on the people that are, accompany, that are like at my side basically, and I'm
Yeah.
responsible for their development as well. So yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and that's tough. And certainly as you think about, and having real conversations around like where are you expected to contribute, like in some ways where are you expected to be an individual contributor and
yeah,
produce, and
yeah,
where, are you expected to coach and manage, and even as a manager having the conversation with your manager and being very clear that if I'm going to deliver excellence in leadership or excellence in being a manager, then it's anywhere from 30 to 50% of your time,
yeah.
depending on the season. At Google, it could be 50 for sure.
Sure. Wow. Wow. Impressive. Well, yeah, but I mean, if you want like to have and grow the next leaders, you need to have like this time. You need to dedicate this effort. So, yeah, I guess it's worth it.
Yeah, yeah, it's worth it. It's worth it.
Well, Nekosi, we know that before Google, you worked with NGOs and other maybe more social organizations. So, how was for you the shift, from this kind of, organizations to a more corporate world? Maybe do you feel
Yeah.
like, that maybe your experience from before was also helpful, at your new role, or how was this change for you?
Yeah. No, great question. Of course, I'm gonna be a broken record again, right? People, people are at the center of it, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, as long as you put people in the middle of it, it doesn't matter the context around them, right? And so, but there are some differences. So, in the NGO and social service space, it's driven by people with shared values, and so you weave those values together, and then they become like shared missions and visions, and people's why become intertwined. And so it's actually easy to motivate. You have to understand, but it's easy to motivate it as a group. And so, at times the complexity was I was leading cross sector leaders from different organizations, different functions, and there we have to intertwine like company missions and individual missions. And so there's some complexity when you start layering people. But it's about people, and it's about delivering value to those groups. Again, understanding, in the nonprofit world, it's funders, and so you have wealthy individuals and institutions and community members and researchers, and so in some ways, it's the stakeholder management can be more complex because the roles aren't as defined. There are different organizations, oftentimes, that are working together. But my business school kind of marketing came in really handy for stakeholder management. All the kind of general management and people management
Yeah.
became really handy. And so, there I really learned how to coach people and lead teams and connecting to the why. Some of the smartest people are in the NGO space and really scrappy, really resourceful. The skills transfer, transferable skills, the program management, the finance and auditing, the sales and development. So same people, right? But in the corporate world, just to wrap that up, yeah, in the corporate world, no matter where you have different groups and you have stakeholders and users and clients, but they're all people, right? And so it was helpful, the work I did in the NGO space to port that over to the corporate world. What I would say for anybody is just like create your personas, right? Create your personas, know who you're serving, and deliver value, and just see how you can deliver value to them. Uncover pain points. That's in both worlds. Just ask your question: what are the pain points of the people I'm serving, and the people that are like, what are their pain points? You discover those, you prioritize those opportunities, and just deliver on their experience, and think about what is their experience. And it marries a lot of the work we did in the NGO space, marries a lot of the work I was doing in kind of program project management. But to wrap it up, I'd probably say 5 things. I said 5, so I'm gonna have to hold me to 5 now. Now I said 5, I have to figure it out. And so it's like it's growing people. It's like trying to scale best practice. It's positive people experiences. It's building partnerships, and at the end, as I mentioned, it begins and ends with like data driven decision making. And in both worlds, that was really important. Just like what data are you looking at, and
Yeah.
how is it informing your decisions forward?
Yeah, I totally agree. And I also had some experience working with nonprofit before. And yeah, it was just like you mentioned, everything was about the value, right? Everything was about the mission. And then when I shifted to, companies and working especially with marketing, you see that it's so important to bring, value to the conversations inside corporations as well, right?
Exactly.
Because you need
Exactly.
like to think about, okay, how am I going to bring value to my clients? How am I going to bring, value to my users? So everything is basically centered on this concept. And yeah, I wanted to mention that because you got me thinking. Everything actually is connected through the most important things connect everything. I would say it doesn't matter
Exactly.
if you are in an NGO or in a company. So yeah.
Exactly. You have more resources at the company level for sure. And
Yeah.
so it does spark some of that innovation, right? You're able to like, oh, I have this idea that's out of the box. It's a little easier to implement in
Yeah.
corporate because
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can convince some folks and you can get a budget and there's some, but you're oftentimes so constrained in terms of funding with the NGO.
Yeah.
I remember coming up with great ideas, what I thought were great ideas at least, but it's like it didn't,
Sure.
like there's a budget and we have to kind of,
Yeah.
hit the
Yeah.
target. So it's a little
Yeah.
different.
It's challenging for sure. Yeah. But well, at the other hand, as you said, maybe it's a bit easier to motivate people because,
Absolutely.
yeah, the things that you are
You have
talking
to, but
about
you
are,
motivate them to go exactly. You motivate them to go above and beyond. They like
yeah.
be scrappy
Yeah.
and have multiple hats and be underpaid and all
That's
the
true.
good stuff.
Yeah.
And so yeah, they're
Mm-hmm.
both great
Yeah.
spaces to operate in.
Totally. Um, well, I mean, you had like worn so many hats during your whole career, Nekosi. That's very interesting. And it got me thinking as well. Do you have like a favorite area? Like, are you planning to focus on a specific, I don't know, department or skill right now that you want to develop? Or do you see yourself, like this people person that is always exploring different areas and ways of doing things? What do you say?
Yeah. No, that's great. Yeah, because if you look at my resume, it's kind of like, where is it looks like a weave? Like, what's the theme? And um, so I'll probably keep a little bit of that going. I like to seek out opportunity. But yeah, this is a good reflective question. It's almost like therapy. I feel like I'm on a couch, so I'm gonna think about it a little bit. But I think I'm an entrepreneur at heart. I know that. I like to like design and create. So a lot of times in my career, something was new. It was a new department, a new team, a new way of thinking about
Yeah.
something. And so I love to step into those environments. And I look for those opportunities. I love being part of the decision making. And so that's a little different at scale. There's so many layers, right? It's a little different than when I work in some of the smaller organizations where I was C-level and I was
Yeah.
reporting up to the CEO, and like in that position that's a little different, and so I liked that, and so finding that balance. But I think yeah, ultimately I've helped organizations kind of grow and scale, and my employers have received my greatest return on my contributions, and so right now I think I'm going to invest in myself, and so I'm really
Nice.
looking at business ownership, um, and that goes several different pathways to like small business to helping a friend and stand up this AI company, and so that's where I am now. A little flexibility. I'm lending my skills and expertise to different people, and hopefully investing, and hopefully something to take off. It's like my own venture capital. I'm investing in myself, and one of the ideas are going to take off
I love
and
that.
pay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. Well, and joining podcasts as well. So
Exactly, exactly. You see, it creates this opportunity.
that's fantastic, Nekosi. Yeah. Well, I hope that in a few months maybe we can have another episode and you can tell us all about your
Absolutely.
new adventures. Yeah. I also wanted to talk a little bit more with you about leadership, right? We discussed it a little bit ago because I mean, you are just like I guess you have so many stories and many tips to share, being someone that has led so many people and teams. But I got curious because I guess, when you are a good leader, probably you had good leaders in the past. So maybe you have like a few, role models to share with us, or at least what are, in your opinion, like your main learning points regarding leadership that you would like to share with the audience?
Yeah. I would say I probably have learned equally from bad leaders and good leaders. Yeah, I had in my first job, I worked in a copy center. I was in high school, and the director there, we would get really busy. I was in a law firm, and we'd get busy, and we'd have to make all these copies, and and I would look up and I would see him stapling papers. And so he taught me, don't ask anyone to do something that you're not willing to do. Get in the trenches, and that's a balance, right? Like I can add value doing, different types of work, so I don't need to be in the trenches. Sometimes I'm not adding the most value if I'm in the trenches with you, but if I need to, I can get into the trenches. I had another leader that encouraged me to say I don't know. And I remember just being a little junior, and this is whether you're IC or a leader, but it's tough as a leader because sometimes you walk into a conversation, someone's asking you a question, and like you're not the storehouse of that information. You can go and get it, or it's downstream, and it's okay to just say I don't know. Sometimes you kick yourself. Oh, I should have known that. You breathed with your team. You thought you had all the data points, but just like it's okay that I don't like to say I don't know. If you want to follow with my hypothesis is, or what I do know is X,
Yeah.
but being okay with saying I don't know, I grew a lot in being able to do that.
Wow. I love that.
And yeah. So that was a big learning for me. Um, yeah, part of it we mentioned beforehand, just how individualized it has to be, and so that's part of the time it takes. And so I think about the times when I was showing up and I wasn't the best leader. At times, it's you know that's the one thing you could put on the back burner. Everything's
Yeah.
going on. That's fine. No one's checking in because your manager and your manager is not checking in on your leadership, on your management, right? Like most of the time, you might, some people do a people check, but for the most part,
Yeah.
when you're full speed ahead, right? You're looking at your boards and you're seeing what jobs have been done and not done, and you're not
Yeah.
checking in on your people, and so that can fall right. And so what you measure matters. And so that's even as a leader, whatever you measure matters to your team. If it's important, find the data point, measure it, putting in front of your team. And so if management is that, put that in front of your team, measure that, right? And there's ways you can
Sure.
do that, right? Like it could just be from a output perspective. How many sit downs that you have, coaching time, that thing, but measure it because it's going to matter.
Yeah.
But yeah, and it takes time. That personalization means that before you sit down with anyone, you're you're going through your notes, you're thinking about what's going on in their life, you're like connecting it to those times when you're going full speed ahead and you forget that their kid was sick yesterday, right? And
Yeah.
you're not engaging with that lens. And so it's just taking time, taking a step back, and like really personalizing the conversations. I think are gonna help
That's
any
great.
manager produce.
Yeah, I feel like you have such a human leadership style, Nekosi, because yeah, because you take this time, you connect with your people, but also because you don't try to be that perfect leader. Because sometimes we have this idea, right? Like the leader has all the answers, and the leader is this perfect individual that knows everything. I had leaders that tried to transmit this image. And later I had leaders, well, such as Guiche, who works in Octobot, who that always tell me, okay, it's okay to make mistakes. It's okay to don't know anything, or at least not everything.
Exactly.
Because, yeah, I mean, this gives you a lot of freedom to try, to explore. If you think, okay, I'm not going to do anything because I need to be perfect and I can make mistakes, I mean, it's really difficult to find new things right? To innovate. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
I love everything you said, Nicholas. I'm writing everything down.
It's recorded, so we can transcribe it. It's a tool
Totally.
for that. There's an app for that.
Yeah, yeah. Nice. Okay. So, I mean, talking a little bit more about the future, you just mentioned that you are investing in yourself and starting some projects. How do you see yourself in a few years? Do you have like a goal or some place you would like to reach in this nearby future?
Yeah, it's a great question. So I'm start personally, right? So like I want to go from being just the okayest husband to the best husband, and the okayest dad. I saw a shirt the other day. It's like I'm the okayest father. So I'm gonna go from the okayest father to the best father that I can be.
Nice.
Be a good and generous friend. Those are at the top of the list for sure. I want to own multiple businesses and investments. I realized probably over this may be a week old, so this is new. I'm working on it. I'm workshopping it, but it's like three things that I'm really working for. And so the first thing is just to enable me to live a little right now. Just have a lifestyle, go on vacations, have a little fun right now. But
Cool.
also something that where I'm thinking of the future, where I'm like saving for retirement. And
Yeah.
I talked to my cousin, she's 20 years old, and so she's like, "What?" But everyone should be thinking, I want to live a little when I retire. I want to stop working at some point, and I still want to live a little. So how can I still live a little when I retire? And then I have two kids, and so like how can I leave them as much legacy and resource as possible? And so the sky is the limit. I don't want to put like a number on it or anything like that, but I just want to like do as much as we possibly can. I think, and yeah. So that's kind of where I am. That's where I am. Who
Yeah.
knows? We'll catch up in a couple of months, and maybe I have some announcements then, but we'll figure it out.
We'll do for sure. Yeah, it's really inspiring. It's really inspiring, Nekosi, because you are like taking care of your personal life and professional life. So I guess it's something everyone should do.
It's a
Yeah.
blend. It's a blend. I remember as we go even to advice. I remember the concept of like work life balance was big at some point. It's like balance, balance, balance. And I remember a speaker coming in. I never remember where I am, but I was like, it was a speaker, and all I remember is the concept of blend.
Yeah.
And this was before, this is pre-pandemic. So and one of the examples that were used was like, if you have a 9 o'clock appointment or like this was again, we're blending professional and personal. So let's
Yeah.
stop trying to balance it and let's blend it. You have 24 hours in a day. How can you blend it? Like the same calendar, if you have multiple calendars and it's not a work and a personal, that's not effective. So put your personal stuff, everything goes on one calendar. It's a blend.
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
and even so, like after the working from home and how we work now, it's all a blend. And then another situation, I went to Thailand and I ended up working from Thailand, but I was on
Okay.
Central Standard Time, and so I had to create a 24-hour calendar and account for all of my time. Like,
Wow.
but it made me think like you have 24 hours, right? And you're gonna sleep and you're gonna do all of those things, but like go ahead and plan out all of your time. Like if
Yeah.
you need sleep, if you need rest, if you need self care, if you need to go to the gym, if like a date nights with your, just put it all like 24-hour calendar, and then
That's
you'll be,
nice.
yeah, it's just efficient. I know where I'm supposed to be.
Yep. Because otherwise, it seems like, okay, I live my personal life and then I come to the office and I put my professional, outfit and I'm not a person anymore. But yeah, I mean, you are you.
Exactly.
I love that. That's cool. Well, Nikos, another topic that I wanted to bring into this conversation is something related to a few conversations that we had when we met back in Austin a few months back. We talked a lot about product management, right? And I wanted to know your thoughts on the importance of relying on this role, on the role of product manager, for achieving success in software development projects. As you know, here in Octobot, we are always trying to do our best to improve our services as a software development company. And I would love to have you
Yeah.
here talking a little bit more about this and the importance of having this kind of, skill in teams and why does it make a difference.
Yeah, yeah. And so we probably didn't really officially introduce how, I was introduced to Octobot, right? But at the time I was working at Common Threads,
Yeah.
I had a lot of business savvy as acumen, but I never, developed a software before. And that was the project before us. And then I was working within a nonprofit, and like they weren't as savvy either. And we engaged, we sought out several companies. Octobot rose up as like the perfect company.
Nice.
And so we partnered together, right? And you all served without even knowing as, in a lot of ways, our product manager. And we had one in house, but you all were able to coach and to like really drive that function for us. And so that was uber critical. I think project managers, across the board are, again, we're talking about people. I'm gonna bring up people again, but they're the bridge between the people, right? And so you have the customer or the users and the development team, and they serve as that bridge. They're going to help the development team to really understand the user's needs, to prioritize those needs and what those new features might be, or what those development might be. And a good product management is going to be able to communicate that to the development team.
Yeah.
That enables that team to get to work and do it as efficiently and effectively as possible, and get to like, what are the objectives, what are we trying to chew. And so like that's going to be that bridge. And they're going to ensure, right, they're that customer advocate, and so they're just going to ensure that whatever product or software that the team builds, that it's going to deliver on the value to the client. And so that's super critical. Kind of another role, and is managing the other stakeholders in that equation. And so the company's management team is always part of the conversation. And so that product management, a good product manager, is going to be able to balance the needs of delivering to the user, understanding the development roadmap and timeline and that process, but then also to ensure that we're meeting the business needs, and that we're extracting the right value from customers, and that it meets all the business needs, right? Like we're not just doing it. I mean, we're doing it for the user, but we're trying to do it in such a way that the user is willing to exchange money, time, effort, because we're delivering so much value. And so making that case, right, as you're prioritizing features and there's upfront costs, right, you're going to have to, that product manager is going to have to be able to talk to the finance folks and folks holding the purse strings, and
Yeah.
all of the, so it's critical. It's uber critical.
Yeah. Again, it's all about people and the value we provide them with. So yeah, I guess it's
Yeah.
a very nice way to put it.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yeah, good times working together, Nekosi. I hope that in your new project, maybe at some point we will collaborate again. It would be super super
Absolutely.
cool. Yeah.
Absolutely. I have you on my mind for sure.
Fantastic. Well, and well, my final question, let's say, it's basically understanding, we talked a lot about your present and your future, and I want to talk a little bit more about the past. It's also another question we are asking all of our interviewees. And yeah, tell us, Nekosi, if you could go back in time, right, and maybe do something different, or at least give a message for yourself in the past. Yeah, is there anything you do or say? Are there, things that you think, oh, okay, now knowing what I know now, I could have done it differently?
Yeah, yeah. I'm on the therapy couch again. I love it. I live a life with no regrets. Because his timeline is a different timeline than mine. But I would give myself advice for sure. And so I would say to myself, I would say it's fear. I'd say the voice in your head, the imposter syndrome, like that's fear.
Wow.
The anxiety, the overworking, the overstressing, the like perfect being the enemy of good. Even
Yeah.
procrastination is just like all fear. And so I would tell myself to just don't be afraid to be great, and stop hiding your greatness to make other people feel comfortable.
Wow.
And so I would certainly tell myself that. The second thing I would tell myself is that we often overestimate what we can do in a year, but we underestimate what we can do in 10. And so I
Okay.
remember having a 10-year vision, but not really like a 10-year plan. And so, 2 years is going to be here before we know it. 5 years is going to pass. And 10 years is like right around the corner. And so I would tell myself to like, just act now, like start now, invest now, like start
Yeah.
planning the business now and launch now. But, and a part of that is just being committed to it. If you can commit, I can guarantee that if anyone can commit to 10 years, and now you may need to pause and reevaluate the commitment if it's not working, but if it's working and you're moving forward and you're progressing, in 10 years you'll be amazed by what you can accomplish. And so I would just always tell myself, give it 10 years.
Wow. Closing with very inspiring tips. So yeah, it was fantastic talking to you today, Nekosi. Thank you so much for joining us.
Absolutely, this has been a fantastic experience, and thank you, and thanks all that Octobot is doing. I appreciate you.
Yeah, we do. Yeah, we feel the same way. So yeah, this is the first of much more conversations. I hope
Absolutely,
so.
absolutely.
Well, and I also wanted to take some time to thank our audience, everyone that is out there listening to this episode. Thank you for joining us and stay tuned. New episodes are coming very, very soon. Octobot is available, everywhere in different platforms and social media. So make sure that you can follow us. Follow us here in your preferred streaming platform for being aware when new episodes are going out. We will see you soon. Bye. Thanks for listening. Stay tuned to the next episode.